My wife would give me a plum-based drink in a cup every evening, and after drinking it, I would spend 5 continuous hours taking her on a ride on my plane. She would end up soaking wet 5 times. That night I was feeling extremely sleepy, but my wife was adamant about waking me up. I understood what she was trying to say, but I didn't have the energy to fulfill her desires. I was trying to find a way to make her leave me alone so I could sleep, but she wasn't letting go of me. A little while later, she brought me a glass of milk and said, "Drink this, it will wake you up." Frustrated, I replied, "Have some fear of God. I worked the entire day at the office and I'm exhausted. I don't even have the strength to keep my eyes open, and yet you're insisting on waking me up. It's better if you go to sleep and let me sleep as well." Hearing this, she made a sour face. I knew she didn't like my response and that she was now ready to start a fight. However, I didn't want to argue with her at all, knowing it would mean spending the entire night debating with her. I didn't have the strength for any kind of confrontation. I told her, "I don't want the milk and I'm not listening to you anymore. As for your desires, I've been fulfilling them for a long time now. Please let me rest tonight." When I finished, tears welled up in her eyes. Seeing them, I realized how harshly I had spoken to her. I shouldn't have done that. I should have explained things to her gently and with love. Before I could take her hand, sit her down, and console her, she abruptly stood up and left the room. I wanted to go after her, but my exhaustion got the better of me, and I fell asleep. The next morning when I woke up, she wasn't in the room. I knew she must have spent the entire night outside crying. But what could I do? My habit of falling asleep deeply after the slightest work was something I had no control over. Now I was thinking about how to make it up to her. I knew there was only one thing that could appease her: spending time with her. I went to the kitchen where she was making breakfast with her head lowered. I called her, but she didn't respond and continued working silently. I walked closer and stood near her. Just as I was about to tease her or play with her hair, my mother entered the room, forcing me to step back. As soon as she arrived, my mother asked, "Why was your wife outside the room last night?" Hearing this, I glanced at my wife, who looked back at me with concern. I was sure my wife hadn't told my mother anything. She must have seen her outside the room herself. Before I could say anything, my wife spoke up. "Actually, Mother, I wasn't feeling well. My heart was acting strangely, so I went outside to get some fresh air and walk in the courtyard." My mother looked at her with suspicious eyes, trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. I stood there silently, unsure of how to handle the situation, knowing it was all tied to my inability to give her the time she deserved at night. A short while later, my wife sat back down on the chair and said, "Fine, if you all are saying so, then it must be true." I glanced at her, but she quickly looked away again. Her cold and distant attitude was making me restless. I didn't know how to make it up to her. I wasn't even getting a chance to talk to her properly because my mother had also decided to sit there and showed no intention of leaving the room. Suddenly, a plan struck me. I grabbed my lunchbox in one hand and my laptop in the other. My water bottle was still in the kitchen, so I called out to my wife, "Bring the water bottle outside quickly." Since my mother was there, my wife reluctantly agreed and came outside a little later. When she arrived, I took her hand and gently said, "I'm truly sorry for my behavior last night. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. As for giving you time, I promise tonight will be all about you." Hearing this, she smiled, and that smile was something I always loved. I resolved that no matter what, it would fulfill her wish this time. That day at the office, time dragged painfully slow. Early in the morning, my manager had dumped a pile of work on me, and I had been glued to my laptop for 4 straight hours. My back was aching terribly, and my eyes were heavy with sleep. I started worrying that my wife might get upset with me again if I failed to meet her expectations. Not wanting to risk another fight, I quickly went to a store and bought an energy drink, hoping it would help me stay awake. But instead of boosting my energy, it made me feel even drowsier. I glanced at the clock. It was already 8 p.m. Just then, my phone rang. It was my wife calling. Knowing her temper, I picked up on the second ring, fearing she might hang up in anger if I delayed. Impatiently, she said, "I've been waiting for you for so long. I don't know where you've been. Come home quickly. I'm running out of patience." Trying to calm her down, I replied, "Don't worry, there was just a bit of extra work at the office today, which is why I'm late. I'll be home in about an hour." I was completely drained and had no idea how I would make it up to her when I got home. I couldn't risk upsetting her again, especially since she'd been angry with me for the past few days over the same issue. I regretted the day I got married, as I never imagined ending up with such a demanding wife who seemed to care only about her own needs. After an exhausting 1-hour drive, I finally reached home. Whatever energy I had left was completely gone. On my way inside, I saw my mother sitting in front of the TV. She called me over and said, "I need to discuss something important with you." She started listing household expenses and going over the budget. I didn't have the strength to listen, let alone offer any advice. My mind was elsewhere, entirely focused on my wife. When I finally entered the bedroom and saw her, I froze in place for a moment. She looked stunning, like a celestial fairy who had descended from the heavens. For the first time ever, my wife looked stunningly beautiful. She was wearing a red sari paired with red lipstick, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. For a few moments, I just stared, unable to believe that my wife could look this gorgeous. The truth was, she had never dressed up like this before. She blushed as she noticed me watching her, while I felt a pang of guilt because, deep down, I feared that I might fail to fulfill her expectations once again. A short while later, she gracefully sat beside me and asked, "How was your day at the office?" At that moment, I was overwhelmed with sleep. All I wanted was to find a bed and fall into a deep slumber. But looking at her, I could tell she wasn't planning to let me off easily tonight. "It was a good day, just a bit tiring," I replied. Her face immediately showed signs of disapproval, and I noticed it clearly. She reminded me, "Do you remember the promise you made to me this morning? If not, let me remind you. You promised to spend more time with me tonight." Hearing this, I quickly nodded and assured her, "Of course, I remember my promise, and I'm ready to keep it. Just let me lie down for a bit." "My back is hurting terribly right now." Concern flashed across her face because she knew about my recurring back pain, which often became unbearable. There were nights when I couldn't sleep because of it, and she was well aware of how debilitating it could be. She knew I wasn't making an excuse. Worried, she said, "If you allow me, I'll bring you a glass of milk. It'll help ease your pain and wake you up." Grateful for her concern and eager to shake off my drowsiness, I quickly agreed. "Yes, please do," I said. At that moment, my top priority was to stay awake and avoid disappointing her again. She left the room to get the milk while I lay on the bed, waiting for her. My eyes felt heavier with every passing second. I fought to stay awake, but eventually my exhaustion won, and I fell into a deep sleep without realizing it. The next morning, I woke up to find myself alone in the room. I buried my face in my hands, knowing I had once again disappointed my wife. Before I could get up and look for her, the bathroom door opened and she walked out. To my surprise, her face was lit with a smile. I tried to recall if anything had happened the previous night that might have made her so happy, but my mind drew a blank. I couldn't remember a thing. What could possibly be the reason behind her joy? I wanted to ask her, but something held me back. A nagging feeling that perhaps her happiness masked some underlying anger, and she might express it soon. I was still searching for the right words to break the silence when she spoke first. "How's your back pain now?" she asked. I quickly nodded and reassured her, "I'm fine now. The pain is completely gone." Her warm smile lingered, leaving me puzzled and wondering what had truly made her so happy. After that, she fell silent and went to the dressing table to comb her hair. I kept looking at her face, trying to figure out if she was upset with me or if she was deliberately behaving this way to make me realize my mistake. Despite all my thinking, I couldn't figure out what the real issue was. For a while, she wandered around the room, rearranging items, picking them up from one place and putting them somewhere else. I didn't have the courage to ask her why she was doing all this because I knew I had upset her mood badly the previous day. I didn't even know when she had changed out of her dress last night or when she had gone to bed. I was too unaware of anything to start a conversation. After a while, she said, "I've made breakfast for you. Come out and eat quickly." I had assumed she had just woken up and was freshly out of the bathroom, but I didn't realize she had been awake for a while and had already prepared breakfast for me. So I quickly went to the dining table and sat down. My mother was glaring at me with angry eyes. Seeing her like that, I felt something was terribly wrong. I turned to look at my wife, suspecting she might have complained to my mother about me. My mind raced, trying to come up with explanations or excuses to calm my mother down. Then she said, "I don't like this habit of yours of shirking responsibilities." Hearing this, I felt as if the sky had come crashing down on me, the very thing I had feared. My wife had gone ahead and done. My wife subtly gestured with her eyes for me to go back to the room. Without finishing my breakfast, I left the table and went inside. Meanwhile, I had no idea what my mother and wife were discussing. A little while later, my mother came into the room and said, "I've figured out why you haven't had children yet. It's because you don't give your wife enough attention." I quickly shook my head in denial and said, "That's not true, Mother." But she wasn't willing to listen. Apparently, she had seen my wife outside the room again last night, and now she was here to confront me about it. I had no idea how to convince her otherwise. She simply refused to hear anything I had to say. Just then, my wife entered the room and tried to reassure my mother, saying, "Auntie, there's no such issue. You're misunderstanding the situation." It took her a lot of effort to calm my mother down. Muttering curses at me, my mother left the room. Now it was just me and my wife in the room. I looked at her helplessly and said, "Now you tell me, how is this my fault? I'm constantly plagued by sleepiness, and when exhaustion takes over my body, it's nearly impossible for me to overcome it." She looked at me and said, "Don't worry, I have a solution, but you'll have to help me prepare it." Confused, I asked, "What solution are you talking about?" She explained, "Last night, my friend told me about a plum syrup. She said if someone drinks it, they can stay awake for 5 continuous hours without feeling sleepy or exhausted." Just the thought of 5 hours of activity made my head spin. I looked helplessly at my wife, but she showed no sign of sympathy. She said firmly, "I've already endured so much because of you, and I can't take it anymore. I'm tired of constantly defending you against Mother's remarks. Now you have to do this." That evening, she sent me to the market to buy plums. When I returned, she was already in the kitchen, holding various ingredients in her hands. I asked, "Are you sure this syrup will work? What if it causes some other problem in my body?" She laughed and said, "Don't worry, there's no bigger problem than the one we're dealing with now. And even if something does happen, I'll take care of it myself." Defeated, I sat nearby, watching her prepare the syrup. The exhaustion started creeping in again, and I said, "I'm feeling unwell again." She frowned, but then replied, "Don't worry, you'll feel tired for just 2 more hours. Once you drink this syrup, you'll be perfectly fine." Her enthusiasm and confidence in the remedy made me think she believed in it a little too much. A short while later, she shared more, saying, "My friend's husband was the same. He couldn't give her enough time or focus on his responsibilities. But ever since she started giving him this syrup, their life has been peaceful." I couldn't help but feel sorry for her friend's husband, but I didn't dare voice this, knowing it might upset her. It had taken so much effort to convince her to calm down. Once the syrup was ready, she set it aside and said, "We need to let it sit for 2 hours. After that, I'll bring it to you. Just be ready." I quickly nodded in agreement, relieved to have an excuse to return to the bedroom. I was already preparing to sleep again. Within minutes, I had dozed off. I could vaguely hear her voice calling me from a distance. Suddenly, I felt someone shake my shoulder firmly, jolting me awake. Sitting up abruptly, I felt a sharp pain in my back again. Seeing me wince, she said, "Just bear this pain one last time. The syrup I've brought for you will take away all your aches and fatigue." She placed the plum syrup in front of me. For some reason, I felt uneasy about drinking it, worried that her remedy might backfire and cause some new weakness. Reluctantly, I took the glass from her, especially since my mother had entered the room and was glaring at me angrily. After drinking the syrup, I genuinely began to feel better. My drowsiness vanished, and even the pain in my back subsided. I didn't tell my wife how effective it was right away. Instead, I said, "It'll take some time for it to work. In the meantime, please bring me some food. I'm starving." Hearing this, she beamed with joy and said, "See, I told you it would make you feel hungry too. It's already starting to work." Watching her laugh and smile so brightly, I couldn't help but smile along with her. Indeed, the syrup was nothing short of magical. A little while later, she left the room, and I got back to working on my office tasks. For months, I had neglected certain assignments, but now I was completing them with full dedication. At around 9 p.m., she returned to the room. Seeing me working, she smiled and then picked up the paintings stored in the room. She came to me and said, "Come on, let's finish this painting quickly." Painting had been a passion of mine since childhood. A long time ago, I had started a portrait of my wife, but couldn't complete it due to exhaustion and my persistent back pain. This often left her upset with me. Recently, she had insisted on having a new painting made of her in the red sari she wore the previous day. However, on that particular day, I came home completely drained and, as usual, fell asleep before I could even start the painting. But now, all my fatigue was gone. My dear wife sat before me, and with great enthusiasm, I began working on her portrait. From that day forward, my life became peaceful again. My wife no longer complained about me, and I started fulfilling her wishes without her even needing to ask. My mother's grievances also vanished, as I now spent quality time with her as well. Even at the office, my days were productive and enjoyable. Previously, I would either doze off or feel perpetually tired. But ever since drinking the plum syrup, my life had turned around completely. All the worries and frustrations I once had were gone. A year later, Allah blessed me with a beautiful baby girl, completing my life.